governmental बैठक where everybody who's involved sits on either side and we discuss everything. So I have today tells us that the country is moving in the right direction. There are many challenges, but I do want to engage with growth at home. We are very, clear that the rise of India is unstoppable. Obviously, COVID came. We had everybody had a big problem. And a country of 140 crores had the biggest problem. Okay. But very quickly, the thoughts of the country changed, saying, "Acha, ye aa gaya hai, now what do I do? How do I find a way out? How do I put in place systems? Dawai kya karu? Vaccine ke liye kya karu?" So, if you were to use even COVID as an example of comparison, there were countries which just threw up their hands. And these were not only developing countries. There are countries in the developed world who threw up their hands. That if you looked, there were countries who struggled with their medical health system, who had problems getting medicines, who sometimes had vaccines. They didn't have the system to put the vaccine into people. So if you look at that whole experience, to me it's like been an enormous test for India. And it is a test through which, at great sacrifice, because there's nobody anywhere in the world who's been unaffected, who's not lost somebody in some form. And we have come through that test very strongly.
Email exchanges from inside the BBC, they talk about the risk of violating Indian laws. It's easier to rake up the freedom of speech debate, but does it give anyone a free pass to knowingly violate the law? America supports India because it needs India's support in return. And India is working with the US because it suits India's interests. This is how geopolitics works. Last night, he diffused a crisis with his defense minister. But today, Netanyahu was confronted with a new problem. His cabinet seems to have rebelled against him. The UK is looking at the Indian subcontinent to fill its coffers. That India seems to be negotiating from a position of power, like a partner and not a former colony. The US and Russia are dangerously close to an armed conflict. This year, 2023, New Delhi will be the capital of global diplomacy. For a country as diverse as ours, with 88% of the population illiterate, it was a very big deal to write a constitution, and that too, the world's largest. Meanwhile, if we may, here's a Republic Day gift from India for the BBC. A list of suggestions for the BBC for their upcoming documentaries. Number 1, the Kohinoor and the colonial loot. Number 2, an outdated monarchy and unhealthy obsession with the royals. Number 3, racism in 2023? We're waiting.